ARG's FTW, which I will explain exactly what that means in due course. And we have a surprise special guest later, so you're in for a treat. Before we get to that, though, let's talk about Denver Startup Week first. This is the 5th annual Denver Startup Week. It's the largest free entrepreneurial event of its kind in North America. I want to say thank you to our title sponsors, Comcast, Chase for Business, and the Downtown Denver Partnership. This session is part of the developer track, which is sponsored by Hired, one of 6 programming tracks aimed at supporting the entire entrepreneurial team. And Hired.com is the world's most intelligent talent matching platform. And if you're really quick, you can look at some logos and some other sponsors. They're all super awesome. All right, so this makes 5 years running that I've given a talk at Denver Startup Week. I've heard a rumor I might be the only person that's done it all 5 years. I don't know if that's true. But just to summarize real quick, way back in 2012 and 2013, I did consecutive Android sessions. Then in 2014 and 2015, I flew in special guests. We had Cecilia Labadie, who is a Google Glass user. You might have heard of her. She got pulled over in California for wearing Google Glass while driving, and she was on CNN, New York Times, etc. So we had her out here and had a Google Glass panel. Then last year, we did something really special. We brought Dario Laverde, who's a technology evangelist for HTC. They make the full virtual reality setup called Vive. It wasn't public yet, but we had it at Denver Startup Week last year. A whole bunch of people got to try it. And this year, we're talking about alternate reality games. And we have a special guest, but I don't want to give away who that is just yet. Here are 2 of my favorite Johns playing with virtual reality stuff last year. John Rundle and John, who runs Denver Startup Week, along with Jay in the back. So this talk is a little confusing, right? Like the title is confusing, the description is confusing. So I want to just nail down what you can get out of this talk. This is really aimed at 3 different groups of people, and you might actually be in all 3 groups if you run a startup. So you might be an engineer. If you're an engineer, I'm going to tell you how you can have a lot of fun and maybe make some money and have some cool experiences with games that are available out in the world. You might be in sales and marketing. I'm going to tell you how you can connect with one of the most difficult demographics to connect with. They're very smart. They wear crazy t-shirts, and they never want to listen to advertising. But what I'm going to explain to you had thousands of people around the world really excited about what was essentially a marketing ploy. So we'll get into that. And then if you're a storyteller, or you like to hear stories, I have a lot of stories to share with you today. All right. So to get started, you know what? What I was going to do was read a story that I published on medium.com to get this started. But to make up for time, I'm going to skip that. And we'll cover it real quick. So I'll walk you through what alternate reality games are and a specific alternate reality game, which will have a lot of details. And then we're going to take some questions. So think of questions along the way. Best questions can have a prize towards the end. So the story I want to tell is basically, I once caught a fish this big. This is a beloved character to definitely 100 people in the world, or really thousands of people around the world. But the 100 winners definitely love firebass. Firebass is a time-traveling, hacking bass. Okay? We'll get into that a little bit more. This whole experience that I'm going to relate to you, I wrote an article about it, or blog post, whatever you want to call it, piece of journalism, called Ready Player 2, the Firebass Challenge. It's been seen by more than 1,500 people I've never met. So it's like really exceeded my wildest expectations. I really wrote it just for the people who were on my team, because it was a really cool experience we had, and I wanted to like memorialize it somehow. So definitely check that out later. Medium, if you're not familiar with Medium, is a publishing platform. It's run by the same guy who runs Twitter, Jack Dorsey. It has these cool dashboards, and like, I don't even know who posted to the Android Dev Reddit subthread, but through that, 170 people want to read this article, so that's kind of amazing to me. We'll get into what instrument.com is too. You might be wondering why is this random website at 36 referrals? Okay. All right, for the win. So I'm a software engineer, and works okay, right? Like your politics, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you like your boss, maybe you don't. Maybe you're on a good project, maybe you're on a bad project. But I love challenges and puzzles. Probably a lot of you guys do too. And all the better if they're competitive and there's an opportunity to win something. So I've had some pretty good experiences in that. This is probably the pinnacle. You're going to see an embarrassing photo of me in a second of my competitive hacking. This top picture, which is cut off, is I'm about to go on stage in front of 3,000 people. And so apparently you need makeup when you do that. That's at the Palms Casino in Las Vegas. And then there's the result after being up for like 2 days, like a 5-figure check. Sam Murphy, Mike Zellum, Josh Jones, and I, who all at one time worked in Denver. Just Sam's left for California. The other two are still here. We won this $10,000 novelty check, which was a hoot. We took it to like every casino in Las Vegas and tried to play every blackjack table with it. And we won a bunch of other small prizes as well. So we won close to $15,000 just for that one experience. Then I had a more recent experience that was pretty neat. Earlier this year, Avery, which is a brewery in Boulder, had a hackathon. And it was a beer-related hackathon. And the competition was really good up in Boulder. And I was actually kind of shocked when Team Mystery Flight, which our team name was U+1F37A, which I think is the only reason we won. We had like the best name ever. That's the Unicode for the beer mug emoji, which most humans can't understand, and even this PDF formatter couldn't understand. But that's Josh Jones, Liam, myself, and Emily, a Twitter employee, who got together and built something over the weekend and won stuff. So if you have questions later about how that worked, the grand prize was free beer for a year. So basically, I can go to Avery anytime I want and get 3 beers. Just sit down, show I this like Willy Wonka style magic ticket, and I present that, and I get beers. We also won. Like I went home with a stack of cases of beers that I'm still trying to get through. I don't drink enough to move through it quickly, and a bunch of gift certificates and stuff. So that was pretty cool. One of the fun things, so to kind of, as if 5-figure novelty checks and free beer for a year wasn't enough, let me throw a professional angle into this. Something that hackathons and competitions like this have done for me have helped me professionally. They're definitely a good networking tool. You're going to be surprised by the caliber of people that I collaborate with internationally in this contest. When I get into the details, you would know already if I wrote the story, but we'll save that for later. But you also get public presentation skills. So it might seem like I know what I'm doing up here. Just as I was leaving the office at noon, I was telling people at the office how nervous I was. And I still get nervous every time I present publicly. It's scary to talk in front of a bunch of people, but you get better at it over time. And it opens up a lot of doors. So here's a picture of me earlier this year giving a presentation in Boston. So I would have never imagined maybe 6-7 years ago when I did my first hackathon that I'd ever do like speaking at a conference. My conferences were things that I paid for and went to if I was lucky enough and had employer support. And these days, conferences sometimes even pay me to go talk to places. And you get all kinds of cool opportunities. Another Boston, Texas, with a nice typo. Spelled Android, A-D-N-R-O-I-D, my talk title. And then, skip it? Oh shoot, well, that's a bummer. I had a cool picture of me. I gave a keynote in Paris to about 1,000 people. That was totally random. You just like put yourself out there and you're doing things. And I think people in this room might understand this. And sometimes just out of the blue, somebody's like, hey, do you want to give the keynote? You're just going to give a little session in a room and then all of a sudden, bam. So I can't say enough about competing in these kind of technical competitions and then parlaying that into other kinds of pursuits. I also want to mention that it's really good for the ecosystem. Like Denver Startup Week has been so good for you, even over all 5 years. But you guys have experienced the energy this year, which is out of control. It's so good. 5 years ago, I was in like a moldy basement office room presenting, and Startup Week was good, but it wasn't anywhere close to what Jay and team have grown up to at this point. So go speak at a meetup, contribute in some way, give back to this community if you can. All right, so let's switch gears to marketing. So the contest that I entered was about Firebase. Firebase is a tool that Google decided this year was the year they really wanted to promote. It was a recent acquisition. They have an annual conference called I.O. That's the t-shirt I'm wearing. This is the Denver version of it, blue bear on it. And they partnered with this company called Instrument.com. They're a digital agency up in Portland. And they created this alternate reality. They wrote a kind of white paper on their experience, and what they found was that they were trying to reach developers, and so I'll just read this. During our discovery phase, developers told us they often feel like they are under advertisement siege. They balk at product ads, and they're not persuaded by overt self-promotion. In fact, they are not receptive to being persuaded at all. Does that sound like anybody in the room? Definitely not. So while initially we had delved into product updates, competitor analysis, SDKs, interoperability, and data-driven decision-making, we eventually asked a completely new set of questions that led us to these findings about the audience. Interested in using their own downtime creatively, respect the unexpected and clever, responsive to self-referential or meta humor, which also counts for me. Taking our findings into consideration, we designed a multifaceted, interactive scavenger hunt that would appeal to developers' sense of community and humor, interest in solving problems, and creative intelligence. And it totally worked. So you remember that fish I showed you earlier that I caught? Like they did all kinds of cool things, like they gave out these special decks of cards, which had all kinds, you can see here, you have like a special Joker version of an ASCII fish. It's like, it was really well done. They did a great job. It was like viral. The way it started is ridiculous. We'll get to that in a second. But it was very small in the way that it started, and it turned into something big and international. So that brings us to what is lovingly known as the firebase.foo challenge, and our fish, and this crazy acronym ARG, which stands for alternate reality names. So firebass, which is a play on firebase, is not the first alternate reality name that's ever existed. In fact, going way back, like at the beginning of the internet, before the internet was even really big, Microsoft had a big one called I Like Bees, 9 Inch Nails, and several other recording artists had some. I was just reading about one the other day where a pair of Canadian DJs, I've never heard of, I guess I'm not cool enough, but they have a rabid following online. And they set up an ARG where they basically shipped out their like vinyl records to the world, and 5 of them, instead of having the actual music on them, they just played a code over and over and over again, and they had a little note inside. And so through the internet, people found each other, and eventually all 5 were discovered, and it turned into this long alternate reality. So that's what an alternate reality is. All right, so this one happened to start at I/O 16. Has anybody ever heard of Google I/O before? Okay, has anybody been to Google I/O before? Okay, awesome. Google I/O is probably, this is selfish of me to say, I run the Google developer group in Denver, I work with Google through Android, but I think it's the coolest tech conference in the world that I know of. And it definitely, it's kind of died down a little bit in terms of its difficulty to get a ticket, but it's still basically impossible to get a ticket. You can have all the money in the world, be up with 10 computers when they go on sale, and it used to be that tickets would take about a week to run out. That was about 7 years ago. Next year, it took a day for the tickets to run out. Next year, it took an hour. The year after that, they were basically gone as quick as YouTube concert tickets were. Just instantaneously, they were gone. They've since moved kind of like an application thing. It's more like a lottery. You enter a raffle, and you might get a ticket, you might not. And keep that in mind when I explain what the prize to this alternate reality is. So just to sell I/O 16 a little more and share some of the color of Denver, here are some of the great characters you can run into at Google I/O. So this is Adam Muniz. Some folks in the room know him. He used to work at Triage, still proudly wearing his t-shirt there. And totally random. Like, this is a great Denver story. I'm out in California. I had no idea he was there. He's a friend of mine and an old coworker, and I just walked into him. So it's a good example of how Denver has really grown. And then, present today, Kelly Schuster, who's also fun to hang out with at I/O. If you're an Android fan, you run into all kinds of neat people like Greta Meyer. And because because you can never have enough Kelly Schuster, and it's a cool picture anyways. Kelly is an amazing person. She can basically hang upside down. Okay, so this is how this viral contest started. I'm in a code lab. They moved Google I/O from the Moscone Center in San Francisco to Shoreline Amphitheater. It's just like Fiddler's Green, but in California, in Mountain View, right in Google campus. I go to the keynote, I leave the keynote, I go to a code lab, playing around with Nest, trying to get a little thermostat to turn on this fan. I have it like hardwired to run all the time because it's like 90 degrees and it's hot. And as I leave, I run into Kelly, and at the same time I notice this business card, and I look at it because it looks like somebody scribbled on it. So I pick up the business card and it says, "Help, I lost my fish, please help me find it. Last seen at firebase.foo." And within about 5 minutes, I found out that at the end of this long rabbit hole, at the end of this contest, you could win a free ticket to Google I/O, which one, you can't buy, you can't get, like, they're impossible to get. But even if you have the privilege to get them, they're about $1,000. And they were giving away 100 of them. So it's $100,000. And I was like, it's on. You know, forget this conference. I'm figuring this thing out. So I'm there, like, poking around with my phone, firebase.foo. I figured out, like, the first kind of clue, and then realized that my phone wasn't going to cut it. Like, I needed to be on, like, a real computer, and I took, maybe politely, maybe impolitely, overtook one of the code lab computers and started hacking away this project. Eventually got stuck and went over to the Firebase area of the conference, and that's where things like really blossomed. Ran into some other people, were working in the contest, had this kind of like similar conversation every time where nobody wanted to work with anybody else because everybody was so competitive. And I would just be like, you know, I get that you're apprehensive about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm farther than you are. Like, have you found the troll underneath the bridge yet? And you're like, the troll, the bridge, I don't even know about that. Okay, I'll work with you. There is no troll and no bridge, but you get the idea. Okay, so this, first off, a couple funny things about this. If you email this email address, or previously if you did, then Alex Nettleton is not a real person. And scribbling on this is not real. They made like thousands of these business cards. But if you email that, you got a funny response. If you called this phone number, the voicemail was hysterical. And it was like a panicked person who had lost their fish. And like the thing was, the whole game was very immersive and very creative. The people who did it did a great job. And so anyways, this is the firebase.foo website. And you can see, if you've ever been to the real firebase.foo. If you've ever been to firebase.com, it looks just like this, but it doesn't have all these weird fish references all over the place. And so this was like the first kind of challenge. That's all there was. So like, what would you do if you came to this web page and actually at this point I still didn't know there was a free Google I/O ticket. My kind of nerd pride kicked in. I wanted to figure it out. So what would you guys do?
Look at the page source.
Look at the page source, exactly. So you go into the page source, and there's some weird stuff in there. There's this bp.text reference that you can jump to. There's this note about a typo, and there was this funny thing where all the way through the copy, there were a bunch of transposed E's and S's. So I started to think, okay, maybe there's a typo thing going on. Has anybody here read Ready Player One? It's fantastic. If you haven't read it, write it down, go read it. I mean, it's like a summer read. It's not like great literature. It's just really good, nerd, fun literature. And Steven Spielberg is making a movie of it right now. It's in pre-production. It should come out next year. It's going to be awesome. You'll want to have read the book before you see the movie. So here we see this admin/firebase/access.html. Type that in. Doesn't go anywhere. I'm thinking about these typos, and I had kind of like I kind of cheated in the sense that I had heard a story about Ready Player One, this book. There was an insane alternate reality game inside a book that was about a futuristic, fictional alternate reality game. And it turned out there were like 8 typos in the book, and they meant something. Like, if you got the letters and strung them together and looked at the page numbers or something like that, you would eventually get to a website and went to this like year-long challenge. So that, like, the typos were on my mind anyway, so I was like, well, what if I put firebass? You know, change the E for an S. And so that it looks like this. And that got me somewhere. got me this like buggy looking page. And so what do you do here? Well, you look at the source here. And so if you look at the source here, that image that looks kind of broken has a bunch of zeros and ones. So you think, well, probably that's binary code. You translate that, and you get the string HGWELLS, which is our first hint that this might involve some time travel, because H.G. Wells wrote the time travel. It's really fun for me. I haven't been to this deck before, so like it's surprising me what the next things are. It's like reliving a fun experience. And then there was this URL, and then that got you this hdwells.html. Go to this next web page, and now we're into like something, we're kind of outside of Firebase now. We're into this like pro fishing area, and this weird terminal thing that it fills in text, kind of Unix style. And where do we go next? Okay, so like inside the code of this page is this crazy hex value, which converts to /bass/JCR, or we don't know what it is. But if you keep going, side note, let's go back a little bit. There's a little Twitter bird over there, and just to give you an idea how like in-depth this is, there was an actual Twitter account. I actually can't remember now, but I wore it around like a badge of pride for like weeks. I think I was the 8th follower of Real Firebass, who, funny story, follows one person. Anybody guess who that is? His first name's Lance. Lance Bass. Anyways, he has Real Firebass now has thousands of followers, or well, I guess maybe not, hundreds of followers. So I took that today. Okay, so I mentioned like the progression of where I was going. I finally made it to Firebase marketing tank. You can see all these people in yellow screens. This is the first person, Tom Anderson, who I convinced to join me. And eventually we got up to about 5 people. Tom is super interesting. I mentioned like professional things, or also like personal things that are interesting too. This guy is he's a software engineer in the Bay Area, but he doesn't really live anywhere. He's on a 100-country tour around the world. So if you go to the letter I, letter M, M.R. Anderson, like I'm Mr. Anderson, on YouTube, you can see he's shot this beautiful video, 4K, in every country he's been to on this 100-country tour. I'm pretty sure I put the link at the end of this presentation. You can see a bunch of business cards on the floor here. I've given a kind of short version of this talk before, but some of these photos I've never before presented. So you guys are getting the first ever, like kind of behind the scenes look. So this is a marketing person for Firebase. She was real coy at the time, but it turned out she kind of ran this whole thing, this whole initiative, and worked on it for the better part of a year before it got exposed to the engineers at this conference. The whole contest was full of all these funny fish puns and weird things, and just really creative puzzles. Like here was the result of one web page that I got to. And so I looked at it for a while. This is around the time that I started adding people onto the team, because they were like, okay, I haven't seen that fish yet. Like, how have you gotten to this fish? And I was like, well, like, what have you done so far? I was thinking, kind of sniffing them out. And, okay, well, I've done these things. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, here's how you get, 3 steps further, and you'll be right here. Help me figure this out. And so this particular puzzle, it's hard to see in the light. Is there a light switch here? Turn off lights. I don't think we'll center from it. But some of these letters are colored, and if you read the colored ones, and we did this like literally together, 4D, F7, and somebody else is typing in, the whole way, and you double check, you end up with this sort of 4D, 65, etc. And if you convert that back into ASCII text, you get members and affiliate with a slight typo, and affiliates of the Intergalactic Computer Network. No idea what that means. But it turns out that this guy, JCR Licklider, and if you remember, if we go back, right here, there was this, JCR thing. So then we go forward, we're like 3 steps later. He's a pioneer in computer science, and he had something to do with that international space, whatever, he founded it. And it happened to also involve another famous computer scientist who now works at Google. So we're pretty sure we were on to something. So that allowed us to fill that in and got us to a brand new web page with all these checkboxes. So this was a relatively easy one. Basically, you just need to read the check boxes are ones, the unchecked boxes are zeros. It's a binary string. There's a funny side thing that turns into that, which translates to blp.html, which we're getting deeper into the rabbit hole. And so you end up with this full URL. But funny side thing, if you check all the boxes in the thing, you got this pop-up on the web page that is just like infuriating to people. Like people would come up to me and go, "The hair of the fish that read you, what does it mean? What does it mean?" And I'd just be like, whatever, man. I'm like 2 hours past that. Like you're stuck. You're stuck in a dark corner. The trolls are gonna get you. So I had this URL, and now this gets us to our first time portal. And what happened here was, essentially it was a block. So we're at a conference, right? And I'm supposed to be attending events, etc. But I'm like hacking on this thing furiously. And they basically shut it down. It's like Wednesday, middle of the week, and the instructions said it would reopen on Sunday night, which is after the conference is over, which was great. Like everybody kind of breathed a sigh of relief. We don't need to stress so much. There's a fun concert tonight. The beer is about to start flowing. So we got to take a break and come back Sunday night. So when you come back Sunday night, let's see. Oh, sorry. So side comment. At the very end of that long kind of Linux screen, you got this /pass/data fragment, which is like this weird hint that here we go. When you went to that URL, there was a JPEG, and that JPEG had this hidden text in it if you made multiple layers in Photoshop and like slid them apart. And so we obsessed over this for a while. Like, what does that say? Is it like firebase? Didn't really know, and just kind of let well enough alone. Come back Sunday night, and so quick side comment about the team, because I didn't read the whole story. So I ended up meeting these 5 people, awesome engineers, and collaborating with them. One of them happened to be from Denver. We worked together for like 4 hours, and like in a lull, I was like, "So where are you from?" He's like, "Oh, I'm in Denver." And he lives like 3 miles from me. Never met the guy before. Really funny. So ultimately, of the 5 people, one guy just dropped off the face of the earth. We never heard from him again. At the end, naturally, we made a GitHub repo, checked all our stuff in, and we just had our GitHub usernames to communicate by. And he just disappeared. He was from Belgium. I hope he got a ticket eventually. Anyways, we got this new URL. You just check. Okay, I gotta speed this up a little bit. Got this web page. This is complicated, and I'm just gonna fly through it because there's not really time. This is actually this is the hardest puzzle that there was, so I will spend a second on this. And it's cool because it uses the real Firebase website. So what this is telling us is basically when we got this web page, we started clicking on all the different links to see what they did. And spoiler alert, eventually it tells us that you need to find 4 clues, and we started looking for those 4 clues. This was one of the clues. This was the first clue, which you could tell by this SUP tag, HTML SUP tag, and all the clues had a superscript, super font, whatever. So anyways, if you go to this page, the actual Firebase web page, and view the source of that, even today, because I took this screenshot today, and view the source, you will see that same string, flag message intercept from code source, and get started for free. So, and then you see this, and this drove us nuts. So I'll give you guys a minute to like think about this. Like, what could this possibly be? It's obviously not binary. It's not hex. It's not base 64. Time. Great guess. That was my first thought. It looks like hands on clock, right? So we spent an hour at least, like jotting down the times and trying to then convert those numbers into something else. And I'm going to spoil them either way. Does anybody else have a guess before we move on? It turns out that in the old days, like pre-radio, yes,
Semaphore, yeah.
very good. Semaphore flags, which is also a thing in programming, semaphores, but unrelated to semaphore flags. So in the old days, like in the Coast Guard, to like communicate to like the earliest version of Morse code, essentially, before radio or cell phones that we have today was flags that you could hold in different directions. So here they are. You can do all the letters of the alphabet. So that's, it spells stop, S-T-O-P is what it spells. So then we went on to the next clue. There was like this mail interface, had Morse code. Oh, this is important. So see this URL here? That's where the 4 clues are going to go. So we found that eventually. Like, cool, we already have the first letter, or the first word. At that point, we thought the words were important. This spells put it all together. For context, we're only about 1/3 of the way through the whole alternative reality. I mean, the third section, I just like totally glossed over in this presentation. But just to give you an idea of how hard this was. We're just going to follow through this. Let's get to this. So here's the summary sheet. S for stop, I for intruder. This one is tricky. It turns out that this was an L. We couldn't figure, actually nobody in the whole game figured out why it was L. Everybody had to brute force the L. We got the 4, we got the S, the I, and the O. This was an animated GIF, and one of the frames was like a different color and had GPS coordinates in it, and it was for Orlando. Nobody was able to figure out what the L was for, and later there was a blog post by the creator that kind of explained it, but it didn't really make a lot of sense. So anyways, here's our new URL. So then now we went from 2008 website back to a 1997 website, and we had to wait a couple days again. And this was cool because I was out in California, and I had this conference, and my college roommate lives out near Stanford, so I got to visit his family. And then the weekend after was this awesome music festival called Bottle Rock, which is up in Napa. And so instead of flying back to Denver and back and forth, I just stayed out in California. And so 2 of the engineers, one worked for Lyft. You guys have heard of Lyft, right? One worked for Coffee Meets Bagel, which is like a dating, it's a dating site, dating app. It's actually pretty popular. They do really well. So anyways, we went to his office, the Coffee Meets Bagel office, and the Lyft engineer came over. And so when this came live, which was I want to say Tuesday night, we hacked together with Mr. Anderson, who was God knows where, Hong Kong or Canada or some other country, and our other engineer. It's a long story. You guys should read the Medium article. We hooked up with these students that were in Boston, and anyways. So I'm just gonna try this. Here was the previous clue, the images, and basically this time there was a 5-piece thing. But these clues were easier, but they were way harder to brute force. I think they might have changed the game midstream because they realized that somebody brute forced. The Boston students that we connected with, what took us like 3 hours, they did in like 15 minutes. When they tweeted something that only you could know if you'd gotten to the end, and we were like so impressed that we were like, hey, let's get our teams together and see what we can do here. All right, so then we got, has anybody ever played Zork? I'm the only old person in the room. Okay, awesome, cool. So if you're not one of those 2 people, Zork, if you've seen *Halt and Catch Fire*, actually, maybe some of you younger ones have seen that show, they have a similar game called Cave Adventure or something like that, Castle Adventure, and it's basically a command line interface game where you search around, and they like recreated a whole like command line game. And at this point, we knew it was the last section, and the first 100 people to finish were going to get tickets. So believe me when I say pressure was high. We were super stressed. We were like, what do we do? We're lost in the forest. What are we supposed to do? But anyways, eventually, hooray, we got to the end, and there was this form. We were so excited. Fill that in. And so here's the 3 of us, Flavisco and Danny. That's Coffee Meets Bagel and Lyft. And we got this cool little finish sign, finished web page. And then there was like this awkward 36-hour wait. It told us that we'd hear in the next 24 hours if we won, because there was no way to know if we were one of the first 100. They eventually, a couple hours later, they took down the end of the game. And so we figured, okay, we're probably good, because there was like an hour buffer there. Then I got this magic email which said, we want a free ticket to Google Live at 2017, really exciting. And so that kind of summarizes the whole thing. I do want to talk a little bit before we get our special guest online about community. So one of the cool kind of after effects that happened with this was we used a Slack channel for our 5-6 person team, and I opened it up to anybody in the world that had won the contest, and they had to like prove themselves, and then I would invite them in. And so out of the 100 winners, we had 6. And we now have 28 people that we found, like just totally randomly. One person would come in and they'd have collaborated with a couple people. And it's been really cool to exchange like how people work together. The Lucy thing, the L thing, like drove us, like the whole community was really like into how did that happen. Here are pictures of people with it. That's in Malaysia, this guy Henry Lim, Philadelphia, Denver. We shared pictures of our winning ticket. So it's been really fun. That's a nice side effect of this. So with that, so the special guest is in alternate reality games there's something called a puppet master. The puppet master is a special role for the person who designed the whole thing. So through like the back channels of the internet, I eventually found out that company, instrument.com, was part of this, like set this up. And I found the guy, this guy Brian, who I've never talked to actually, I've only communicated online, but we're about to talk to him, kind of ran this whole thing. So if you have questions for me, great. If you have questions for Brian, who is one of the instrumental people in setting up this whole alternate reality game, I'm going to try and Google Hangout with him. We'll see how that works. We've got about 20 minutes for that, which is perfect time. So before I do that, let me just make a quick GDG Denver announcement. So GDG Denver, Google Developer Group, it's awesome. You guys should all come speak at it. You guys should all attend it. But very timely is that October 15th, we're doing our 3rd annual GDG Dev Fest. It's at the Google Boulder office. And we get about 100 kids in who are excited about technology, play with robots and basic programming skills, etc. So if you have kids, it's awesome. If you don't have kids, but you like people who are really passionate about technology, which trust me, you will. If you're like beat down by your job, this will rejuvenate you for months. Come on out and help mentor the kids. It'd be really awesome. You can find out more at the GDG Denver website or reach out to me. In March, we do a Women Tech Makers event, and we do events all the time. All right, we're back to the thank you slide. Let me see if I can find this guy, Brian. Let's have some questions while I'm trying to set this up.
You said your blog or you wrote an article? Where is that?
Great question.
Oh, I just posted it on Twitter and video.
Oh, perfect. Okay. It's on, actually, if you go to my Twitter account, it's my pinned tweet.
Cool, okay.
That's probably the easiest way. And actually, I should have mentioned this before. I'm 5280mark on Twitter. The hashtag is Dan Startup Week. You guys should all be tweeting this event. That'd be amazing. And then if you want to add Firebase or Firebass, and on Firebass, you'll get a bunch of weird people around the world who will actually definitely look at your tweet. It'll be looked at in Malaysia, it might get retweeted all over the world. Who knows where Mr. Anderson is right now.
What's the name of the group? The Instrument?
Instrument.com. Yep. Here's a bunch of those links. Maybe that will be helpful. Get this together.
The GDG Denver thing?
Yeah.
Do you guys usually host those in Denver, or are they?
Yes, you almost always. Only one event a year is in Boulder. And that's a partner, we're doing it in partnership with the Google Developer Group Boulder and Fort Collins.
Oh.
Actually, funny, glad you asked that. We usually have it at 15th and Wynkoop, but for security reasons, we might be looking for new space. So if you're an office that wants a bunch of like really smart Google-related developers to show up and maybe be stealing from their employers, talk to me, and we'd love to host an event at your
Was
place.
that at the iTriage office then?
Yeah, exactly. Alright. Basically, the security thing is that the new rule is we have to have somebody in the downstairs lobby the entire time of the event. And it's like doable, but it's a hassle.
Yeah. Security officer. Yeah. But we have to get. That's our elevators. Where do you work now,
I still work at Recounts.
Okay.
Hey, the puppet master. Can you hear us? Check, check. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear us. And we definitely can't hear you. Let's see. Hold on. I'll call you for audio. Did you say thumbs up or what?
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down?
One second.
Oh,
You guys can chat, right?
yeah. Good point.
I mean, mining is fun.
Some of it's like puzzles.
Yes. Yeah, if you don't want, if you don't want to use some of it, you can use that.
Say hi, wave, yeah.
Backward.
Was it dark?
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Brian. You're on speakerphone. No problem. I'm gonna try and plug you into a overhead speaker. See if that works. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Okay, you're amplified. Okay, so we got a big room of people from Denver Startup Week, and I just went through my whole alternate reality game experience with the firebase.foo project that you were so awesome to work on. And so we're going to take some audience questions here. And I guess I'll just kick it off by asking, how did this idea come about?
Well, we were brainstorming. Oh, hold on. Can you?
Oops.
I'm getting a huge echo in my phone.
Hold on,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
mute this.
Hangouts.
Oh, yeah. Good call.
Okay, so we started off by brainstorming different ideas for what a campaign could be, and eventually decided on an alternate reality game. And honestly, at lunch, I just thought it'd be funny if the whole concept was instead of firebase, someone typoed the E at the end, and it was a fish, like an AI fish.
Awesome. What was the deal with the Lucy clue? Like, how are we supposed to figure out that that was an L?
And I can no longer be credit.
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Oh, awesome. Is the echo bad still?
it's bad when I talk.
Okay, yeah, so I'm muted after the question. So my question is, there was a clue that was silo.html. It was 4 individual puzzles. We just went through them all, like the semaphore flags, it spelled stop. And the third one was, the answer was Lucy, you later exposed in a blog post. But none of the people on our team or many other teams would figure out how you guys got to the L in Lucy. I don't know if you can remember that part.
Yeah, it's not actually Lucy.
Oh,
The word was actually locating, and by sheer chance, people got ingenious with how they were coming up with their answers and ended up with Lucy as their answer. But the L was still the first letter in the word, but the answer is actually locating.
huh. Do you remember how you were supposed to come up with locating?
I pulled in the code. I totally forgot. It's been a while.
That's okay. Let me see. While you're looking for that, I'm gonna see if there are any audience questions.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody got questions? Yeah, back there.
Was this their first ARG, or there were a bunch of companies up in that area? I can't remember some of the others, but like did the Lost Ring and some of these other ones up there.
Okay. Cool. I'll ask that. Let's crowdsource a couple other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering what were the major lessons they might have learned from,
From a marketing or an engineering perspective, or both?
from an engineering perspective of creating the game, and how would they ever test it for length of play and things like that?
That's an awesome question. Anybody else?
And a follow-up, if it is their first one, what was the time suck? Because I have done one, and we budgeted X amount, and it was 4X in the amount of hours it took the puppeteers to work and change.
Got it.
And so I was curious about the time.
Okay, I'm gonna try and let's pause. All right. Okay, I just got like 5 awesome questions. I'm gonna try and remember them all. Let's start with. Do you have an answer on location now?
Yeah, I believe that was the QR code, the partial QR code that people were finding. So I actually had time off permissions set, and if you visited at different times of the day, different pieces of that code would display. You get all of them and then read the QR code, it should come back with locating.
Genius. We were too impatient. Okay, so the first question was, and is this your first ever ARG? Like, has your group done other ARGs?
We have not. So the first time we came up with one, and I mean, I've experienced kind of playing around with them before, never designing them. So that was a really fun experience, just trying to come up with interesting ways to hide clues and stuff.
Okay, so the next question was, what are some of the lessons you learned from a marketing or engineering perspective?
Definitely, you need more time for things. We're under quite a bit of a time crunch, so it was really difficult to try and come up with stuff that was feasible to build in a short amount of time. And then also, it was a little bit tough. This was kind of a risk taken on Firebase's part to build a project like this to begin with, but it's important to trust that your audience is smart. And there were definitely much more complex puzzles that I wanted to put together, but there was a lot of hesitation around that, thinking people wouldn't be able to solve them. So I would say in the future, push more for the understanding that your audience is very intelligent and they will solve things.
Awesome. So related follow-up, there was a question was, how did you budget the time to build this? And did it work out? Like, did you decide it was going to take X hours in advance and then it took 2X, or how did that work?
This is probably the most atypical time budgeting project we've ever done. It's hard to explain how little time we actually had. So we were kind of brainstorming at the same time we were building things, and everything came together extremely quickly. So I could be putting together a pitch deck for an idea the same day I'm trying to build it. It was pretty difficult. So I would not recommend trying to duplicate our time budget efforts.
Awesome. Okay, and we had a question about how you tested it. It sounds like you were building it right as the real users were about to play it, but did you have any testing?
So we had kind of a little bit of testing. We would share stuff internally, the functional aspects of the puzzles, and try and get feedback from people both at instrument and at Firebase. and we also have a little external third-party QA to make sure that things were solvable. We would give them the steps to solve it, but we have to make sure that they can actually get through it. There wasn't any blockers in the way.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna crowdsource a couple more questions. Hold on. All right, Kelly, you have a question?
It was about the testing.
Okay, perfect.
How
Yeah,
many people did they have that helped build this?
great question. Cool.
You had mentioned that you thought that they might be making things more difficult in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
Was that actually true?
Like as it went along.
Yeah, was
or-
he making it, like, was he actually adjusting the puzzle as it went along?
Oh yes, got it. Yeah.
Humans are pretty smart, but I was wondering if they had any contingencies for if, like, it stalled, you know.
Right.
so-
Yes. Okay.